But first, Foreign Minister Penny Wong has revealed the government's considering a request for military help from the Gulf states.
Many countries which are non-participants have been attacked by Iran through this. You would anticipate as a consequence that we have been asked for assistance, and we will work through that. We are not participating in offensive action against Iran, and we've made clear we would not participate in any ground troop deployment into Iran.
Yet again, all of this language making it clear we will not participate in any offensive action against Iran. I mean, God forbid we do anything to take down Islamist dictatorships. Joining me now to discuss this, retired Brigadier, former Army Director General Ian Langford. Okay, Ian, now that we know we're going to be sort of, basically a little bit better than the Peace Corps, when we're asked for military aid from the Gulf states, what might that look like under this government?
Well, thanks, Peter. Good evening to you and your viewers. We've got a really long and historic tradition of supporting operations in the Middle East, and the first sort of platforms that come to mind when I heard about this request to support Gulf states are really some of our exquisite maritime aircraft, so our airborne early warning and control aircraft, our maritime patrol aircraft and our air-to-air refuelers, which have operated in and around that region effectively since the early 2000s. So consistent with some of the government rhetoric about what it wants to and what it doesn't want to do, and where I think we can actually provide genuine capability to some of our allies, partners and friends in the Gulf. Those three aircraft of note would make a significant contribution. And then thinking a little bit more broadly, we obviously have strategic signals intelligence and some other really specialised capabilities, which I think would be of high value in the Middle East right now.
Let's go to that comment I made about the government going to great lengths to make it clear they'll have no involvement in any bombing or other offensive activity, they call it, in relation to Iran. Here was the Prime Minister on Friday emphasising that point in relation to Australians on board a US submarine that sank a Iranian ship. Have a listen.
There were 3 Australian personnel on board that vessel. I can confirm also, though, that no Australian personnel have participated in any offensive action against Iran.
Okay, so he's basically saying we're there as submarine tourists. But after those comments, Sky interviewed former Labor Defence Minister Joel Fitzgibbon, and he said, look, I think those are really dangerous comments from the Prime Minister. It's a dangerous precedent to go into that sort of detail and rule things in and out. I agree with Joel Fitzgibbon. What do you think, Ian?
Well, the reality is if you're a posted member on board a warship, in this case a submarine, you're part of that capability system. So it's one thing to be inside the control room as part of a targeting cycle, or really part of that decision to execute, again, offensive action against that Iranian warship. But if you're inside the reactor room, if you're operating in some other part of the ship itself, you can't really make that distinction. So nations put caveats on what they're willing to do inside and outside of coalitions, but I think consistent with AUKUS, consistent with the uplift around training our personnel to be proficient on Virginia-class submarines, and is really part of that undersea system between ourselves, the British and the Americans, there really is some challenges in being able to distinguish what is a warfighting role on a submarine and what isn't, because at the end of the day, it's about the capability system, and it all generates the kind of terminal effects that we saw happen to that Iranian boat in the past week.
And look, if the world's getting more dangerous, Ian, which it is, don't we want Australian military personnel to be absolutely the best trained they can be?
Well, again, the rhetoric around our investment in AUKUS, $368 billion, is to acquire the apex predator. We talk about deterrence, we talk about long-range strike, we talk about the serious investment in this sort of capability. The reality is they are built for this type of outcome. They're built to maintain sea control, to be able to target surface combatants and invariably participate in this sort of combat operation. So it's a good reminder of the discussions around AUKUS, what it means in terms of our security and defence policy, what it means for our alliance obligations, and what part that we want to have in it and where we want to make exceptions and the risks that come with it when we apply them.
Right, two quick ones before I go. I've been reading a lot while I was away about concerns regarding the munitions pipeline. I'm interested in, how much sort of stock you think the Iranians might have left. But what concerned me were reports in relation to the United States and Israel that their supply chain might only last weeks, not months, in relation to the sort of the current levels of bombardment. How accurate is that?
There are some natures, particularly in the air defence realm, around things like the Patriot system, that have been under significant pressure, obviously, in this current iteration of fighting in the Middle East. Numbers around 800 to 900 Patriot have been used to provide air defence, particularly around the Gulf states. They're exquisite systems. They're hard to replace. We have a manufacturing and heavy industry component that's still more or less operating in a wartime capacity. And globally, from everything from 155mm artillery ammunition, which is pretty basic sort of stuff, all the way through to things like Patriots, we are globally short. We're under pressure. And so reports out of Ukraine some 18 months to 2 years ago talked about 4-year wait lists to get things like Javelin anti-tank missiles replaced. The same is in every other ammunition nature, and it's critical that magazine depth gets addressed as part of this defence uplift for all of us if we're to be able to sustain the kind of operations we're seeing right now in the Middle East.
All right, a quick one on the Straits of Hormuz. Some of the energy analysts say within a couple of weeks this will be under control. It will be secured. Obviously, Trump's put the Navy in there, but he's also made comments in relation to the ability of these transport freighting companies, oil companies, to get appropriate insurance, because that's one of the things that have been withdrawn. What's your position?
Well, certainly, I mean, the oil shock and risk around that and LNG will have an impact globally. Keeping the Straits of Hormuz open will be a US strategic priority. It's only the Americans that can really assert sea control and maintain that passageway. And I think, again, shipping companies and their various insurance frameworks will need to adjust in order to accommodate that continued flow of energy to, the growing world economies. The Asian economies will feel it most acutely, particularly with gas.
And are you
I think the US
this
Navy
will
know
pass
this is a priority.
relatively quickly? Yeah, okay.
Yes, weeks though, not days. This is going to take some time.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Ian. Thanks very much.